Week 4 of the NFL season is already here, and we are nearly a quarter of the way through the fantasy football season already. It's time to gear up those IDP lineups, and here on this show, I'm here to give you the top 12 players at each of the IDP positions: defensive line, linebacker, and defensive back for Week 4 of the NFL season. So sit tight, and we'll jump right into that in just a second. Welcome back to the IDP Plus podcast. On this edition of the channel, I'm your host, Axton Harding. You can find me on Twitter at AxmanIDP. Feel free to tag me in anything or DM me questions if you just want to bounce ideas or get an outside opinion on anything. I'm open there as well, so feel free to also throw in comments and share that as well if you kind of like what you see. So I'm hoping that I can make a case for you guys and help you kind of make some roster decisions and some start-sit decisions by laying out the top 12 at each of the IDP positions. So let's jump right into it, and we'll get into the defensive linemen first. We'll hit the big boys on the defensive line. I'll rip off the top 12, and then we'll get a little bit deeper here in just a second. So we've got TJ Watt there at number 1 for the week, Myles Garrett at number 2, Brian Burns at number 3, Nick Benito at number 4, Will Anderson at number 5. At 6 is Andrew Van Ginkel, Rashawn Gary at 7, Max Crosby at 8, Byron Young at 9, Dorrance Armstrong at number 10, Cam Hayward at 11, and Danielle Hunter rounds out the top 12 of the Defensive Linemen rankings for Week 4. So to go back up to the top, TJ Watt comes in at number 1, playing the Minnesota Vikings in Dublin, Ireland this week. He's got 14 tackles, 2 sacks, a pass deflection, 4 quarterback hits, 4 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble and a fumble recovery in the last 3 weeks. He's really come on strong as of last week, where he landed his first game with a sack. Actually got a pair of them, so he came on strong in his first splash game of the season. So I look forward to expecting him to kind of carry that momentum into Week 4. So welcome to 2025, TJ Watt. The Week 4 matchup is actually even better than last week. Minnesota is actually giving up 2.5 sacks to edge rushers per game to go with 9 tackles per game. So big plays will be available and plentiful. Not a whole lot else to say other than TJ Watt is in the most lucrative position he could possibly be in for opportunity. So I imagine he's going to be padding those IDP stats this week. So start your TJ Watts, of course. Myles Garrett this week he goes to Detroit and plays the Lions. He has 16 tackles, 4 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, and 6 quarterback hits so far in the season. He is red hot to start this year, and he draws a little bit of a tougher matchup this week against a pretty stout Detroit offensive line. They've just allowed 1 sack per game to edge rushers, so you would imagine that Myles Garrett is going to be the most likely to land that sack if there's one to be had. But it's not guaranteed. There's not as much opportunity available to take advantage of here. So it's a little bit of a tougher start, but nonetheless, it really hasn't mattered so far this season. Your elite edge rushers are going to find a way to put IDP points on the board one way or another. So this game more or less will provide more tackle opportunity for Myles Garrett as opposed to big play opportunities, more or less the kind of thinking here. So they've allowed the fourth most tackles to defensive ends so far in the year. So Myles Garrett's actually pretty much built up that tackle floor that he's kind of lacked for the last several years so far this season. So we just hope that he can continue that, and I imagine this will be a good matchup for that. So nonetheless, he'll have a good tackle floor. You just hope he can line that sack this week, but he should be one of the top edge rushers week over week. Brian Burns moving up the ranks early on in the season as he starts out scorched earth in the first 3 weeks of play. This week he draws a matchup against the Los Angeles Chargers. So far in the year, he's got 15 tackles, 10 of which are solo, 4 sacks, 2 pass deflections, 5 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble. Burns is, needless to say, Burns is burning on the field. But this week he draws a tough matchup overall, but you know what? This defensive line is so insanely talented. Brian Burns should produce week in and week out. There's just too much to factor in and too much to account for on this New York Giants defensive line as it pertains to just game planning on who you're going to block and prioritize. Any one of them can go off, frankly. So I think Brian Burns is going to find a way to be productive. The matchup only allows for about a sack a game, rough give or take. The Chargers' offensive line is pretty stout, but they will give up about 9 or so tackles per game. So Brian Burns is a high tackle floor kind of guy. So kind of in the same breath as Myles, Garrett is going to be a more of a tackling floor kind of game than a game where he might pop off for a couple of sacks or something like that. But there should be slim opportunity there. We just hope Brian Burns can maybe get some pass deflections or force fumble or something off the edge and add to his big play upside that in that way. Maybe he does land the sack. So, but nonetheless, he's been on fire. The matchup hasn't really mattered. He's found a way to produce, so he's going to remain on top of the rankings. Nick Benito is climbing the rankings as well, number 4. And he plays the Cincinnati Bengals this week, which is a pretty tasty matchup. But so far in the year, Nick Benito has 10 tackles, 7 solos, 7 of which are solo, 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and a whopping 9 quarterback hits. That's most of anybody so far. Benito's big play ability is on full display so far this season, and he draws a tasty matchup against a pretty weak Cincinnati offensive line who's allowing over 2 sacks per game, which is the 5th most to defensive ends so far in the season. They also give up a decent amount of tackles as well, at 3rd most with 11 per game to the position. So Nick Benito ought to be, he's not much of a tackle floor kind of guy, so he's not going to go gobble up a whole lot of tackles, but there should be plenty of big play opportunity for him to get back there and pressure the quarterback, get some hits, sack, maybe a strip sack or something like that. So I like Nick Benito in this matchup this week against the Bengals. Will Anderson at number 5 against the Tennessee Titans this week. One of the top matchups you could possibly have. 12 tackles so far this season, 3 sacks, 5 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits. Will Anderson has developed some consistency this year. This was something that I really wanted to see him kind of iron out in his 2nd year in the NFL. He's not overly flashy, but this matchup is incredible. I know I said TJ Watt's in the best matchup earlier, not exactly the top statistical matchup. This would be it. Tennessee Titans are allowing 2.5 or 3 sacks per game to defensive ends. So there should be plenty of opportunity. You'll find another edge rusher on the same team later on in the rankings. Of course, you already know because I ripped it off the top and it's right over there to my left. So, but nonetheless, Will Anderson has been consistent, been able to find a sack in each of the first 3 games, and opposing defensive lines would just have their way with the Tennessee Titans offensive line. So I think this ought to be a good week for Will Anderson to keep that streak going. Andrew Van Ginkel comes in next at number 6 against Pittsburgh in Dublin, Ireland. As I mentioned earlier, is where that game's being held. He's got 7 tackles on the season, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 2 pass deflections, and a quarterback hit in only 2 games so far. He's a stat sheet maniac. AVG has been able to produce no matter what. Sacks, pass deflections, tackles. When he finds a way to get it done, he is the epitome of a guy who's just going to stuff the stat sheet. So he's drawing a tough matchup this week, actually, against a Pittsburgh offensive line who's not allowed much in the way of defensive end production on the stat sheet. But I'll remind you again, he doesn't necessarily need a good matchup to produce. He'll find a way. Tackles, pass deflections, tackles for loss, quarterback hits. Even if he can't exactly hit the stat sheet, he's going to find those underlying ways to add points to your roster. So in 2 weeks, these stats are pretty impressive. I expect him to kind of continue and find a way this week. Rashawn Garrett at number 7 is really climbing the rankings after his hot start to the season. He plays Dallas this week, another tasty matchup. So far, Rashawn Garrett has put up 13 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and 7 quarterback hits on the year in just 3 weeks. He's a high-end producer this year with Parsons having joined the team. He's really getting that attention, that kind of Parsons treatment where everyone's focusing on Parsons, and he's able to kind of take the second fiddle of sorts, I guess, an offensive lineman, and really take advantage of that so far this year. So Dallas is a great matchup. They offer over a sack per game to defensive ends, a healthy amount over, I think it was like 1.5 sacks or so. To go with 10 tackles per game. So I think Rashawn Garrett is in a good position to carry on his production yet another week into week 4. So like Rashawn Garrett against Dallas this week, now we've got Max Crosby at number 8 going up against Chicago this week. He has 14 tackles, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 4 quarterback hits, and 1 pass deflection on the year. He falls a little bit this week just because Chicago offensive line is pretty stingy. They only allow right around a sack maybe per game and 9 tackles per game. But Max Crosby kind of goes against the grain in terms of the tackle floors because he's one of those high floor tackle guys on the field a ton. High floor tackle defensive lineman. You'll find he's averaging 70 to 80 plus tackles a year whenever he's on the field for a full season. So Max Crosby will at least have a tackling floor this week, I would imagine, but he may have to kind of grind it out in order to get that production this week, so he falls a little bit down the ranks. But nonetheless, you're not really going to sit Max Crosby even in a matchup like this. So I do like Max Crosby's motor and just his ability to find a way to at least maintain a high floor of tackles generally. So far this year hasn't been quite that, but there's going to be plenty of snaps played in this game. Chicago and Vegas ought to go back and forth. If Chicago goes ahead, that's more running opportunity, which is more tackling opportunity, more rushes to ice out the game, which means more tackling opportunity for Max Crosby too. So now if we go to number 9, Byron Young has made the top 12 the last few weeks. The Rams go against Indianapolis Colts at home so far this season in 3 weeks. Byron Young has 20 tackles, 4 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hits, and 1 forced fumble. He is on fire to start the year. He should be one of the top, if not the top IDP in many formats at this point. But this is his toughest matchup yet. This is the toughest matchup, but he's already produced an unfavorable matchup so far. Again, that Michael Parsons effect where everyone's focused on Jared Verse on the other side of the line. Byron Young is a talented edge rusher, and he's going to find a way to make things happen and get that production. And if you're not going to put attention on him, then he's going to take advantage of your second best offensive lineman. So, again, he's produced an unfavorable matchups already, and with that Parsons effect, I think he should remain a high floor producer week to week. Now we've got Dorrance Armstrong at number 10 against the Atlanta Falcons this week at Atlanta. He's got 15 tackles, 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and 3 quarterback hits on the season. So Dorrance Armstrong has really come on strong so far in this season and been really consistent, a high floor kind of player. 5 tackles a game and a sack. He's really been pretty consistent and reliable. So if you're able to get him on waivers off of the waiver wire this week or last week, kudos to you. So again, he's splashing in lineups early, and he's provided a pretty high floor of production. But this matchup is kind of a middling one. They average or give up around a sack per game and around 9.6 tackles per game. So he's going to have to rely more on that tackling production to kind of produce for you this week. But there's opportunity there for, especially with Kirk Cousins back there, a less mobile quarterback, so there should be a little bit more opportunity for a guy like Dorrance Armstrong to get back to the quarterback and maybe get some big plays there in that way. And he's also seeing the lion's share of the snaps on this defensive line, so I think he should continue to, again, see a high percentage of snaps with Dietrich Wise now out for the year. So I think he's going to be a hefty part of Washington's game plan moving forward. So I like the way he's produced so far, and I expect him to kind of at least carry a somewhat high floor play. He's not really going to break the game with a high upside kind of guy, but it should be a high floor play for us this year. Now we've got Cam Hayward at number 11, big defensive tackle coming in, making the top 12. He plays Minnesota, 3 guys in this doubling game in the top 12. So far this year, Cameron Hayward at defensive tackle has 14 tackles, a sack, 3 pass deflections, a tackle for loss, a quarterback hit, and a forced fumble. He's just finding ways to, good players find ways to stuff the stat sheet, and stat sheet stuffers give us IDP points, and that's really all we're looking for here. And this is an outstanding opportunity for Pittsburgh defensive tackles. At 37, Cam Hayward is proving why he's a legend. He's a high floor, consistent play kind of guy. He's always been that way, and he's carrying on the same in this season. So now he's drawing a really tasty matchup at Minnesota, who allowed the most sacks per game to defensive tackles at 1.5 per game to the position, and double-digit tackles per game as well. So Cam Hayward is in a great spot this week to maintain that high floor play and even maybe land some big play upside as well. Now, Danielle Hunter, rounding out the top 12 against Tennessee this week. I mentioned earlier it's an outstanding matchup. Danielle Hunter has been a little bit underwhelming compared to the last couple of years where he's only got 8 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. I know sounds Sounds like a lot, but he kind of got that all in a couple of games. I think in week 2 he kind of fell flat for us. But that's going to kind of happen, especially when you've got a hefty defensive line and 2 talented edge rushers there. One guy might just take up all the production one week. They might share it another one. This actually could be a week where they share some production with the with the Tennessee Titans giving up three sacks per game to the defensive end position. I think that one of these guys has in a great spot to maybe land 2 sacks and have a huge game this week. So Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson should be getting after it after Cam Ward. So that offensive line is just atrocious. I imagine that they will have a day. So nonetheless, great matchup, great players with great upside. This should be a good week for the Houston Texans defensive line. So we'll go back through and summarize the real quick, just kind of rattle them off again. TJ Watt at number 1, Myles Garrett, Brian Burns, Nick Benito, Will Anderson, Andrew Van Ginkel, Rashawn Gary, Max Crosby, Byron Young, Dorrance Armstrong, Cam Hayward, and Danielle Hunter make up the top 12 defensive linemen. All right, now let's talk week 4 linebackers. So 1 through 12, I'll just go ahead and rattle them off. Foye Oluokun, Roquan Smith, Dy'on Henley at number 3, Fred Warner at 4, Ernest Jones, Bobby Okereke, Edgerrin Cooper, Jack Campbell, Kaden Ellis, Zach Baun, Tyrell Dodson, and then Mac Wilson rounds out the top 12 at number 12. So let's jump back in to the top and let's talk a little bit about Foye Oluokun and his matchup at the 49ers this week. He's compiled 23 tackles, a sack, an interception, a forced fumble, 2 pass deflections in coverage, 2 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hit in pass rush. He's seemingly back to his old Foye ways, as of a couple of years ago. If you've been an IDP for the last few years, you know Foye was the top linebacker to have for, 3 years straight. Looks like he's kind of back to his old self. He's insanely stuffing the stat sheet, and he draws a top half matchup this week. San Francisco gives up 17 tackles a game and 2 pass deflections in coverage to opposing linebackers so far this season. And so I think we can expect Foye Oluokun to eat up a lot of those Christian McCaffrey runs. I would imagine San Francisco gets up at some point early in this game and just ends up running the ball a lot. Foye is probably going to be on the receiving end of a lot of those Christian McCaffrey rushes up the middle. And being the only full-time linebacker there in Jacksonville, of those 17 tackles per game that they give up, he's going to be taking the lion's share of those. So Foye is a guy who can get upwards of 17 or more tackles alone by himself. I'm not saying this is that kind of matchup, but Foye should be one of the top-end linebackers week after week all throughout the year, barring any kind of catastrophic setback anyways. So now let's talk a little bit about Roquan Smith and his matchup at Kansas City. He's got 32 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits, and a fumble recovery for a touchdown. He just went scorched earth in week 2. And he gets actually a bottom end matchup this week, but being an elite producer, it doesn't really matter the matchup. Roquan's going to produce and find a way to pad IDP stats for your team anyways. So week after week, he ought to be one of the top guys in overall rankings for the linebacker position, regardless of matchup. But anyways, specific to this matchup, I think this game between Baltimore and Kansas City is going to allow for a lot of long, sustained drives, a lot of football to be played, and a lot of opportunity for tackles. Roquan Smith is going to have plenty of opportunity. It's not like either one side is going to run away with this game. It's not like there's going to be a whole lot of 3-and-outs or short drives. There's going to be plenty of snaps played in this game for both defenses, actually. So Roquan, I think just because of the sheer competitive nature of this game, I think that's probably going to bump up the overall matchup because of the back and forth. Generally, that's kind of how things work with these high-end matchups that usually are coming in with low-end producing stats on average. It's just when you have more competitive games, there's more football played, more snaps, and the full-time guys are going to get more production. So Roquan in this game, I think he's going to be an important piece of this Baltimore defense. You're not going to sit Roquan Smith on any given week. I don't care who he plays against. So Roquan Smith is going to remain one of the top guys week after week. Now, number 3, we've got Dy'on Henley going up against the Giants in New York. He has 22 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, 2 pass deflections, and an interception in coverage. He's been nonetheless a stat sheet stuffer than the rest of the guys above him. So, and he's done much of this in 2 games where I think in week 3, he kind of fell short for us. He didn't really quite, I think he had like a couple of tackles or so, and that was about all he added to the box score. So nonetheless, the fact that he's up here among some of these top end guys here in only really 2 weeks worth of true production, I think last week would be, we can chalk that up as a blip on the radar. That's not too in character for Dy'on Henley, something that we should expect going forward. So I think we just, again, blip on the radar. I think we can look forward to a top end match, a bounce back in a top end matchup here in week 4, where New York actually allows 19.6 tackles per game, which is the third most in the league to the LB position so far this year. And with Khalil Mack out for the year, I think that's going to leave a little bit more tackling opportunity for running backs that slip through that defensive line, get to that next layer to the defense, and meet Dy'on Henley for some rushing stop opportunities. So Dy'on Henley is one of those guys who flirts or exceeds 10 tackles a game on a regular basis. I don't expect anything less here in this matchup against the New York Giants. Let's see. And kind of back to that, the Chargers defense has kind of got some holes in it, so there might be some opportunity for the New York to have longer drives, have more football to be played, and more opportunity as well. The only caveat would be is if maybe Jackson Dart just kind of falls flat on his face and they don't really sustain any long drives and they just kind of get shut down. Dy'on Henley ought to get some production either way. So there's a good matchup. Let's go ahead and ride some Dy'on Henley. Now, Fred Warner coming in at 4 against the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. He plays at home. He's got 30 tackles, a forced fumble recovery, 3 pass deflections in coverage, and 2 tackles for loss so far this season. He's averaging double-digit sacks through 3 weeks. This is pretty good for Fred Warner, a guy who's kind of been a high-end producer overall, but more of a stat sheet's tougher than a pure tackler. Now he's adding a higher floor for tackles this year. I love to see that. Fred Warner getting 10 tackles a game is outstanding. That's kind of something we've all been kind of hoping for and waiting for much of his career, but he's kind of been 120, 130 tackle guy. Nobody's going to get 160, 170 tackles, but he's on pace, well on pace here. So love the looks of it. And then, the fact that he's getting big plays as well in coverage, and he's even rushing the passer, getting some quarterback hits, more points for our IDP rosters. So Fred Warner is going to be one of the top end guys most of the time here. And now if we want to talk about the matchup here, it's actually a bottom end matchup or a bottom 5 matchup where they're only giving up 13 tackles a game. Jacksonville is to opposing linebackers. But again, elite linebackers find a way to produce, and if he doesn't get a high-end tackle number, he's probably going to pad it with some pass deflections or some sort of other big play statistic that he generally does week over week. If he's not getting a high-end amount of tackles, he's rushing the passer or getting some pass deflections or something in coverage. So Fred Warner, number 4 linebacker this week. Ernest Jones at number 5 against Arizona. He's got 25 tackles, 2 pass deflections, an interception, and tackle for loss. Ernest faces Arizona in week 4, who allows 16 tackles per game and some big plays in coverage to opposing linebackers. Jones will have plenty of tackle opportunity and could end up adding to the bag in coverage if he can get his hands on a pass from a mistake-prone Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray is allowing over a pass deflection per game to opposing linebackers. Ernest Jones ought to be able to have some sort of success in coverage should the tackles not be there. But nonetheless, again, these top guys are guys who just find a way to produce. Ernest Jones in a little probably a more middling matchup overall this week, but there's some big play upside. Bobby Okereke at 6. This week up against the LA Chargers at home. He's got 34 tackles, 1 pass deflection, and a quarterback hit. So he's just a pure tackler kind of guy. He's going to add some big play upside here and there, but it's not going to be quite as often as what you see from some of these other guys like Roquan and Foye or anything like that. But Bobby Okereke is a heavy tackler. He can get you 17 tackles in a game. He can get you. I mean, his floor is probably going to be more like 7 or 8 tackles in a game. His ceiling's going to be 17 or more. So he's got kind of a wide range, but he's going to be a hefty tackler either way, week in and week out. So far this season, averaging over 11 tackles per game is pretty solid. Now he's facing a Chargers team who's giving up 18 tackles a game through 3 weeks to opposing linebackers, and even some big plays in the passing game as it pertains to sacks and pass deflections as well. So there should be some opportunity this week against the Chargers. They're going to have lots of long sustained drives and give plenty of opportunity to the New York Giants defense, who's going to have their work cut out for him. Bobby Okereke being being the only full-time linebacker there in New York, ought to get the lion's share of the 17 tackles or 18 tackles per game that the that the Chargers are giving up. I'm kind of expecting a little bit. Man, that's probably going to be a pretty pass-heavy matchup considering the defensive front for New York. But Bobby Okereke, again, the Chargers have gone back and forth. They've been run-heavy, pass-heavy. It just depends on the matchup and how things go. So they're pretty flexible. But generally, 18 tackles a game. It's going to bode pretty well here for Bobby Okereke at 6. Now, Edge Cooper Edge Cooper at 7. He let us down last week. He was our number 2 linebacker, only got a couple of tackles in what was an outstanding matchup, but that's going to be kind of how things go, guys, especially when you have a team who's got 2 top 12 linebackers potentially, in Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper, both playing 100% of snaps. You can only have so much pie to go around. You can't both get 15 tackles a game. It's going to kind of go back and forth. There's going to be games where they both get some. There's going to be games where one of them gets lion's share of the other one. It's not really neither one of them is going to really just completely carry on the entirety of the season. So that's going to kind of happen here and there. But I think for the most part, it's going to be Edge Cooper who takes the bulk of the tackles on any given week. So that would be my bet to place if I were a betting guy for one. And I am, if you go check out DFS Street. But I won't get into that. Anyways, Edge Cooper should be a guy who and more often than not, probably ends up with more tackles than Quay Walker. But yeah, this week being going up against 18 tackles a game, there should be plenty of opportunity for both these guys to produce. So I like Edgerrin Cooper this week against the Chargers team, who should be able to kind of make this game pretty competitive. And if anything else, the Chargers might get up early and run the ball a lot, which lends well to more tackling opportunity for linebackers. So either way, I'm liking this matchup for Edge Cooper this week. Number 8, Jack Campbell slips into the top 12. Jack Campbell so far this year has 25 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. He's not too flashy, but he is a volume tackler with the best possible matchup against Cleveland, who's allowing over 22 tackles per game to opposing linebackers. They even give up almost two pass deflections in coverage as well. Campbell is not heavily utilized in pass defense, but the opportunity will be outstanding for potential tackle opportunity, and maybe he does find a pass deflection in coverage or something. But generally speaking, we're already looking at a high floor for tackles. Coming in at over 22 tackles per game is leaving. If you even had 3 linebackers in there, you're just looking at 7 tackles for all 3 of them if you split it up 3 ways. I don't think it's going to be an dead even split, but it just goes to show there's going to be plenty of opportunity here. So I love Jack Campbell here in a plus matchup against Cleveland. Kaden Ellis at number 9 against the Washington Commanders. He comes into this week with 18 tackles, a sack, a pass deflection, 3 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and a pass deflection. I already said a pass deflection in coverage. Kaden Ellis, the pass rushing linebacker, finally cracks the top 12 for me after a pretty good week last week. So he's playing a generous Washington offense who's giving up over 18 tackles a game to the position, and Ellis should have a solid floor this week for tackles, and there might even be a chance for some big play upside on a mistake-prone young quarterback in Jaden Daniels, who has been known to give up give up sacks off the edge. So maybe he can slip in on some blitz opportunities and get back there and rush the passer, get some quarterback hits or some big play points for your for your IDP teams. But nonetheless, this matchup is going to be a high floor one for Kaden Ellis. So I like him this week. Start him with confidence. Now we've got Zach Baun at number 10. He plays at Tampa this week, goes against the Buccaneers. He comes in this week with 22 tackles, 3 pass deflections, an interception, a quarterback hit, and a tackle for loss. So he's carrying that solid floor play from a year ago and adding some big play splashability into it this year. Not really overproducing, but he's a top-end linebacker either way. Tampa Bay presents a poor tackle and sack matchup for opposing linebackers, as they only give up really 15 tackles a game and like a third of a sack. They're pretty stingy in terms of overall production given up to the linebackers, but there's opportunity in coverage with a pass happy Baker Mayfield, as he's offering over 1 pass deflection per game in coverage to opposing linebackers. So Zach Baun is a pretty good coverage linebacker. Maybe he does find his hands on one of Baker Mayfield's passes. But nonetheless, they ought to be they ought to be running the ball hefty amount. Bucky Irving is going to get plenty of work. Rashad White, they kind of run a tandem backfield back there, so there should be plenty of work on the ground for Zach Baun to at least kind of maintain that high tackle floor. Again, these top end linebackers are going to kind of have a nice floor of tackles, just generally speaking. This matchup doesn't necessarily speak to an overall upside play, but but there should be opportunity for floor play for Zach Baun. Tyrell Dodson comes in at number 11 up against the New York Jets this week, playing at home in Miami. He comes in with 33 tackles, 23 of which are solo. That leads the league at the linebacker position. He comes in with a sack as well, a pass deflection and coverage, 2 tackles for loss, and 1 quarterback hit. Like I said before, he leads the league in solo tackles and has proven to maintain a high tackle floor regardless of matchup. This week, his matchup, he draws the New York Jets. It's a poor, as poor as the Jets offense is, it's kind of a poor matchup. There's just not a lot of good sustained drives with a middling or backup quarterback. This team just really hasn't performed well on offense, so there's only been limited opportunity. But again, Tyrell Dodson in that green dot role in Miami has just been outstanding so far this year. So I'm not scared of the 12 tackles a game. Again, this linebacking core in Miami is soaking up a lot, all of the tackling production from the holes in that defense line. And Jordan Brooks are really coming on strong this season so far with hefty tackle numbers. So I think Tyrell Dodson is going to be on the receiving end of a lot of those rushes right up the middle for Breece Hall. You kind of hope that maybe the Jets can kind of push back and give some competitiveness to this game. Miami's defense isn't really a scary one, so maybe there is opportunity here for Jets to kind of have some long, more sustained drives, give more opportunities for these IDP players to remain on the field and add more production to your fantasy rosters. So Tyrell Dodson, I'm just kind of more or less riding the wave here. That high ratio of solo tackles to assisted tackles is really going to give you a bump up in your IDP lineups. 23 solos out of 33 tackles overall. That's pretty good. Every 3 tackles, he's getting 2 of them solo, and pretty consistently. So I just love Tyrell Dodson as a good play really each and every week. He's going to be kind of right around that 12 spot, if not right behind it. So he ought to do fine for the remainder of the season, barring any setbacks. Again, green dot linebacker, 100% of snaps, overproducer week to week, so he's going to have a high floor. Mack Wilson sneaking in here in the top 12 for Arizona. He plays against the Seattle Seahawks this week. He comes in this week with 28 tackles, 4 pass deflections in coverage, 2 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hit. He's getting it done in coverage, and he's also getting it done in the pass rush game, and he has a respectable amount of tackles. He's averaging over 9 tackles per game so far this season. So he's quietly one of the best pass linebackers in the game through 3 weeks. He's generating a league-leading amount of hurries at the position, and he's also outstanding in coverage with those 4 pass deflections like I mentioned earlier. So he's offering many areas of big playability. Surprisingly enough, he wasn't really a flashy player last year, but he's proving to have some big play upside so far this season, and he faces Seattle, who's giving up over 19 tackles per game. So I think Mack Wilson ought to stay busy week 4. 19 tackles per game for an Arizona defense, or on the table for an Arizona linebacking defense, and he's really the only one playing full-time snaps, so you got to figure he ought to be getting a hefty, healthy amount of tackles there just right off the rip. So I think we're looking at a pretty solid floor with some big play upside here for Mack Wilson at 12, rounding out the linebackers. So let's go ahead and just recap real quick. The top 12 at number 1, we've got Foye, Oluokun, Roquan Smith, Dy'on Henley, Fred Warner, Ernest Jones, Bobby Okereke, Edgerrin Cooper, Jack Campbell, Kaden Ellis, Zach Baun, Tyrell Dodson, Mack Wilson at 12. So that's the top 12 linebackers for week 4. All right, now let's talk week 4 defensive back rankings. So 1 through 12, we've got Brian Branch, Derwin James, Kyle Hamilton, Jordan Lewis, Tyke Smith, Drew Phillips at number 6, Trayvon Moehrig, Paulson Adebo, Talanoa Hufanga at number 9, Cameron Curl at 10, Budda Baker 11. Now at 12, we've got Cooper DeJean. So back up to the top, we've got Brian Branch up against a Cleveland offense. So far this season, coming into week 4, Brian Branch has collected 17 tackles, 2 pass deflections, 2 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, a sack, and a quarterback hit through 3 weeks of play. Now, if we want to, let's actually go back and kind of filter this total tackles. So far this season, Brian Branch has been pretty well on par, stuff in the stat sheet as he usually does. Been involved in coverage with those pass deflections, like I had mentioned. Then also getting into the pass rush game as well, getting tackles behind the line, getting sacks. Top end producer week over week, and this week he plays a Cleveland Browns defense who is, let's see, a top end matchup for him, a top 5 matchup here, a team giving up 15.6 tackles per game to the safety position overall, and geared towards assisted tackles. There's also opportunity here for interceptions, as they're one of the most generous offenses in terms of allowing interceptions to opposing safeties. They're giving up 0.6, almost 1 tackle or one interception per game. So generally, we're starting out with a high floor for tackles already in this the matchup just coming in for Brian Branch. So I think against Cleveland, there should be some opportunity here to maybe get back at statue Joe Flacco, or maybe get some hands on some passes and coverage, and if nothing else, he ought to be able to be involved in some Quinshon Judkins tackles throughout this game. Now, if we want to look at Derwin James coming off a scorcher last week, he plays at New York up against the Giants this week. He comes into the week with 26 tackles, a sack, 5 tackles for loss, 2 pass deflections, and 3 quarterback hits. He's just a high-end producer at the safety position, and this week is going to be nothing different, where he's going up against the New York Giants, who present actually a bottom-end matchup, but I'm not really all that worried about the matchup. Because we're talking about Derwin James here. So the guy's going to go out and find his tackles and find his production one way or another, regardless of what the team has been giving up historically. So they're not really too worried about the matchup. Derwin James is going to be a top-end ranked safety for much of this season. So, and rightfully so. Go look at the stats. The production speaks for itself. Derwin James is one of the top safeties in the league. Another top safety in the league, Kyle Hamilton, is going to find himself in the top end of the defensive back position just because of his sheer consistency, especially this season. Now he's going up against Kansas City team this week. It's going to be a competitive back and forth affair, as I mentioned earlier in the show. Kyle Hamilton himself, though, comes into the week with 23 tackles, a forced fumble, a tackle for loss, and 2 pass deflections in coverage. So Kyle Hamilton is one of those guys playing heavy amount of box snaps. He's in and around the line of scrimmage, as many of these guys are. When you're playing a lot of snaps around the line of scrimmage, you're going to be involved and around a lot of the play, and therefore get a lot more opportunity because you just naturally play closer to the football. So if you're playing closer to the football, you have a nose for the ball. Going to find yourself in on some tackles and some big plays as well. Kyle Hamilton in this Kansas City matchup is going to be getting, let's just see, it's a middling matchup overall for safeties in general. But again, these top end guys, I'm not really worried all that much about the matchup in particular. But there's 13 tackles on the table available, generally speaking, for Kansas City to give up to opposing safeties. But again, this, as I mentioned earlier, this game ought to go back and forth. There's going to be some long drives. There's going to be some big plays. So Kyle Hamilton usually has pretty good weeks against Kansas City and in big games like this. So start Kyle Hamilton with confidence. A new guy really popping onto the scene this year is Jourdan Lewis, the nickelback for the Jacksonville Jaguars at number 4 here. He's been consistently producing at a high level. 17 tackles, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery, 6 pass deflections, a quarterback hit, and 3 tackles for loss. This guy is getting hefty amount of usage around the line of scrimmage, as you can tell from the tackles for loss, and then he's really active in coverage as well, where he's just around and where he needs to be in order to get his hands on the ball and get those points for our IDP teams. So Jourdan Lewis, I was kind of waiting to put put him in the top 12 to see if it was going to be consistent, but now through 3 weeks, I think we can confidently say this guy is here to stay, especially in the nickelback role. He's playing a hefty amount of those slot snaps, so that's just generally speaking going to be a pretty lucrative role here for Jordan Lewis in Jacksonville against in a pretty porous secondary, so he's going to be one of the only and main playmakers there for Jacksonville. Now he's playing San Francisco this week. If we want to look at cornerback production, we've got Nichols factored into all cornerback production allowed here. So let's just take a look at his matchup. Who did I say? San Francisco. That's a middling matchup. Generally speaking, there's 12 tackles on the table to opposing linebackers or opposing cornerbacks. San Francisco's not going to be a huge high passing volume team with Mac Jones under center and the hampered injuries they've got in the receiving core, but nonetheless, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for him to get back there and make some tackles. So, and also to be involved in some big plays as well. He's proven that he can do it week after week and maintain that consistency and high-end production in more than just a one week kind of pop there. So love Jordan Lewis to continue doing what he's been doing and maintain that high level of play. So Tyke Smith comes in at number 5 playing against the Philadelphia Eagles this week. He comes in with 24 tackles, a sack, 2 pass deflections, 2 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hit. So again, a guy's playing around the line of scrimmage. Defensive backs playing a hefty amount of box snaps in the slot or on the defensive line. If you're playing around the football, you're getting the best chance to be involved with a play that around the football, whether it be coverage, whether it be pass rush, whether it be run defense. There's, you're right there in the mix. Free safeties and strong safeties. Well, strong safeties generally are kind of like these nickelbacks where they'll play close to the line of scrimmage and they'll play back, but free safeties generally play deep. There's not you're the farthest player away from the ball at free safety. There's only a couple of players in the league at free safety who are going to just kind of have that nose and be able to maintain a consistent floor of tackles week to week. So that's why we target these nickelbacks, nickel corners, and strong safeties as well. So Tyke Smith, one of the best to do it in the game right now at the strong safety position. So if we want to look at his matchup and as it pertains to production allowed to opposing strong safeties, just want to filter to top 5 matchup for Tyke Smith this week, where there's 16 tackles on the table already before the game even starts. 16 tackles a game given up to opposing strong and there's also 2 pass deflections on the table in coverage per game given up by the Philadelphia Eagles. So maybe there's going to be plenty of big play opportunity here for Tyke Smith to keep building on this high-end production that he's already built up through this point in the season. Now at number 6, Drew Phillips against the LA Chargers this week. Drew Phillips is the nickel corner for the New York Giants. He comes in with 20 tackles, an interception, 2 tackles for loss, and 4 pass deflections. He's more of a coverage kind of guy who's going to get more pass deflections than he is kind of plays behind the line of scrimmage. But nonetheless, he's already kind of produced here almost a 7 tackle per game average, which is a high floor already coming into the game. And then if we want to look at and filter by the kind of production allowed to nickelbacks here for the Chargers, let's just see. It's actually looking like a bottom end matchup to nickelback production. But Drew Phillips really hasn't mattered. He's been one of those guys who's been producing no matter the matchup. And at 7 tackles per game on average, it's not like I think he had 11 tackles or something was kind of his high. So it's pretty leveled overall. He didn't really just drop down and get 2 tackles. He's consistently getting past deflections when he's in coverage, making plays behind the line of scrimmage and just in and making big plays in this. I love this Chargers matchup just because they're going to have plenty of opportunities to be in scoring position, which means that they're going to be running 8 to 10 play drives. Long drives, lots of opportunities. Should be looking at 70 or more snaps in this game. And if you get a guy like Drew Phillips, 70 or more snaps, we're looking at a pretty healthy day for fantasy production. So now we want to look at number 7. Trayvon Moehrig plays at New England this week He comes in with 26 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a quarterback hit as the strong safety for the Carolina Panthers. Now he plays at New England this week, so if we want to take a look at safety production allowed by the New England Patriots, it's going to be a middling matchup in terms of tackles given up overall, with about 13 or 14 tackles on the table for a guy like Trayvon Moehrig. But Moehrig, again, one of these guys coming in, as I mentioned off the top, 26 tackles so far this season is giving us a nice high floor already to come into the game. Now you add a nice, pass deflections and things like that as well. Trayvon Moehrig is going to be a pretty consistent producer for you week in and week out. You can start him with confidence this week, especially in a matchup at New England, who's been, give or take, pretty competitive. They've been able to get in scoring position. They haven't really been one of those high-end scoring teams, but they've been able to push the ball down the field, and that's what we like to see for these matchups with safeties and defensive backs who play around line of scrimmage. So now let's talk about another New York Giants defensive back in Paulson Adebo. We're actually going more towards the I guess Drew Phillips. Did I say he was nickel corner? He might be strong safety. Sometimes I get a little bit mixed up with, because they kind of play similar roles. Nickel corners and strong safeties are both playing kind of around the line of scrimmage, and they'll often move all over the field. Just kind of depends on the team and the scheme. But nonetheless, Paulson Adebo has been a high-end producer so far this year. He comes in with 27 tackles. That's the most so far on this list. 3 pass deflections, and 23 of his 27 tackles were solo tackles. Of course, being a cornerback, you're generally going to be getting a lot more solo tackles, but that is an insane ratio there, where he's only had 4 assisted tackles on the season. So now he's looking at, again, a kind of more of a bottom end matchup overall, but this Chargers team is going to leave plenty of. I think Justin Herbert threw the ball 40-some times in like 2 of the first 3 weeks at least. So I think that there's going to be plenty of opportunity in coverage, and then also I think Amari and Hampton might have run 20 or more times last week as well. So again, it's just going to be a lot of snaps played in this game, and I like targeting those games where it's going to be kind of back and forth, especially in favor of the worst team, and the New York Giants likely to be down. They're going to have, LA is going to kind of have some ho-hum here, where they're going to be running the ball a lot. And these guys are playing around the line of scrimmage, so there's extra opportunity. But early in the game, there's going to be a lot of passing because they're probably going to go up. So Adebo should start hot early. Now we look at Talanoa Hufanga going up against the Cincinnati Bengals this week. He comes in with 27 tackles, a forced fumble, and 2 pass deflections in coverage as the strong safety for the Denver Broncos. And again, he plays the Cincinnati Bengals. So let's just kind of take a look at the matchup for Cincinnati. It's not going to be a great matchup overall, but he's been, I don't know how many times I should say it. These top guys are going to be high floor players for the most part. These guys playing heavy box snaps. A lot of these guys are going to be pretty high floor players. Talanoa Hufanga comes in being a pretty consistent producer. No less than like 7 tackles in a game so far this season, and he's put up season-long numbers as well, if you look historically. So this matchup doesn't really lend well to tackling production, but Jake Browning is a mistake-prone quarterback, and there will be opportunities for him to make plays in coverage for pass deflection, interception potentially, or something like that. So I think that this, and with the weapons that Cincinnati has on offense, they're going to have to be in shootouts all year long. We've known that. Again, I think Denver actually we're just going to have to see how it's going to play out. So last week, Cincinnati, if you get last week Cincinnati, Denver's going to run away with this, and I'm going to be wrong. There might not be any production on the table, but I think a guy like Talanoa Hufanga is going to, again, bring that high floor anyways into the game with him. And then it just kind of depends from there how the flow of the game goes, whether he exceeds or kind of falls down from that kind of average of tackles. But again, he's going to have a good 6, 7, 8 tackles or so just as a baseline. So now if we look at Cam Curl at number 10 this week, he comes into this week with 26 tackles, a sack, and 2 tackles for loss. A good pure tackler who's kind of been off the radar the last couple of years, but now he's getting that excellent usage around the line of scrimmage and in the box. Clearly, he's got that tackle for loss, and so now he plays an Indianapolis team this week uh, generous offenses so far this year with Daniel Jones at quarterback. So far this season, to the strong safety position, they're giving up 15 tackles per game already up front and 2 pass deflections in coverage per game. So we're looking at high floor for tackles and some big play opportunity as well for Cam Curl in this matchup. And I've loved him, loved his kind of style of play and production since coming into the league. It was just kind of disappointing after year 1 or 2, where he kind of fell off for a little bit, was inconsistent, didn't quite get the play that we wanted to see, but now he does in LA. So we love to see that for Cam Curl. Love to see him kind of splash back onto the. Now we've got Budda Baker here at number 11. Budda Baker against the Seattle Seahawks this week comes in with 24 tackles, a tackle for loss, and pass deflection and coverage. Budda Baker honestly could be higher on this list. He is a consistent high-end producer week in and week out. I think he's had a little bit of a slow start this season, generally speaking, compared to where he's kind of started in years past. But in this matchup against the Seattle Seahawks, let's just see. It's kind of looking like a bottom end matchup so far, just off the top. But I'm not really too worried about the matchup kind of driving his production anyways. Again, guys like this going to have kind of that floor that they set for themselves in the season. The matchup might vary that a little bit, but these high-end producers are going to find a way to put points on the board. And sometimes they're going to have duds. Sometimes they're going to be they're going to just have an outstanding game, and it's not necessarily going to be strictly dependent on the kind of production allowed. They would just make it happen depending on how the game goes. So this game up against the Seattle Seahawks, both teams are pretty porous. I think it should be a back and forth affair. The defenses aren't super studly by any stretch. I think Seattle's secondary is probably more capable, I guess, than Arizona's. So there might. But there's going to be opportunity for both teams to push the ball downfield. It should be kind of back and forth. I'm not saying it's going to be a high scoring matchup, but there should be some back and forth here. I like this week for Budda Baker, but he does fall kind of where he's been ranked for me historically, just because it's not an outstanding matchup, and these other guys got some more top end matchups. Now we've got Cooper DeJean at number 12. He falls a little bit again just because he draws a poor matchup, but he's in the top 12 because he's a high-end producer and he's a consistent nickel corner there for Philadelphia. Now he plays at Tampa Bay. He comes in with 21 tackles, a pass deflection and coverage, and a tackle for loss. So he's heavily involved. He's getting those big plays, and this week he plays the Bucks. So let's just kind of take a look. Take a look at the matchup and just what they've given up so far this season to nickelbacks or to cornerbacks in general. It's a pretty good matchup, a top-end matchup. Tampa Bay is giving up 15.6 tackles per game to cornerbacks, just generally speaking overall. Baker Mayfield's going to throw the ball a ton. There should be plenty of opportunity in coverage for Cooper DeJean to make some plays, and then maybe some opportunity in the pass rush for him to kind of sneak in on some blitzes where, there's two pass deflections in coverage given up per game to the cornerback position. I don't think they haven't given up a sack so far, but Cooper DeJean is going to find a way to put those points on the board for you guys. So this week he draws a pretty good matchup against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay and Philly ought to be a damn good game. Again, back and forth. Lots of plays going to be had in this game. So this will be an interesting one to watch, but I think Cooper DeJean is going to be a playmaker and a difference maker for this Philadelphia team. Not just this week, but for much of this season. He's come in and he's really producing. Okay, so that's going to wrap up the defensive backs. Let's run through them again. 1 to 12, we've got Brian Branch, Derwin James, Kyle Hamilton, Jordan Lewis, Tyke Smith, Drew Phillips, Trayvon Moehrig, Paulson Adebo, Talanoa Hufanga, Cameron Curl, Budda Baker, and Cooper DeJean. So that wraps up the top 12 for each of the IDP positions, and I just want to extend a thank you for those of you who might be new and joined us today. I hope you found some of this useful and return to us next week and for the weeks after, or maybe you follow me on Twitter, ask some questions there, throw something in a comment. I just hope you guys get something beneficial from this. This kind of hub that I have for production aloud has been really useful for me to make some start decisions and be able to kind of bump guys up and down on this list, just kind of depending on favorable matchups, unfavorable matchups, and just kind of take a look at it that way statistically as well, just to kind of help me make some of those some of those borderline decisions where I'm kind of on the fence. So I hope sharing this with you and giving you guys my top 12, I hope you guys have found it useful. If you have, let me know. I love to hear all of that stuff and to help out the show. It helps the algorithm, help us get eyes on by more people so we can help more people as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, and actually that's going to wrap up our week 4 show. So luck out there in your fantasy football matchups and your IDP matchups this week. We'll see you back next week for a week 5 IDP rankings show.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.